A critical review of environment of conflicts in Africa. World Bank report suggests that the high prevalence of conflict in Africa is not primarily due to ethnic or linguistic fragmentation, but rather stems from factors like high poverty, weak political institutions, and overdependence on natural resources. While conflicts across the continent are diverse, they share several common threads. 1. Youthful populations and rising aspirations. Africa's rapidly growing youthful population is becoming increasingly aware of global opportunities thanks to education, urbanization, the internet, and social media. This has elevated expectations for improved living standards and governance. However, when these aspirations are unmet, due to issues like contested elections, nepotism, or regional favoritism, frustration can turn into unrest. The widespread availability of arms, often introduced for counter-terrorism purposes, further exacerbates the situation, enabling violent responses to political and social grievances. 2. Elections as a source of tension. While elections are a cornerstone of democracy, they often become flashpoints for conflict. In some cases, losing candidates accept the results, but in others, disputes over the outcomes lead to violence and instability. The push for democracy is strong, as evidenced by successful elections in countries like Nigeria, Senegal, Ghana, and Sudan. However, the challenges remain, as seen in countries where electoral processes often spark unrest. On a positive note, 22 African nations have held elections without significant issues, reflecting the resilience of democratic institutions on the continent. 3. Economic stagnation and resource competition. Many African countries, including prominent economies like South Africa and Nigeria, have seen economic growth slow in recent years. Nations emerging from conflict face significant challenges in securing the resources needed for development, which often results in fierce competition among factions for access to these scarce resources. This in turn destabilizes already fragile political systems. The role of the African Union. The African Union, AU, formed in 2002 to replace the Organization of African Unity, OAU, was designed to address conflicts with African solutions for African problems. Despite its good intentions, the AU's peace and security architecture faces significant challenges. 1. The Peace and Security Council, PSC. The PSC is responsible for managing peace and security across the continent, but its interventions have been selective, addressing some conflicts while neglecting others. This selective approach highlights leadership failures and has hindered the AU's ability to achieve lasting peace. 2. The Panel of the Wise. This body, composed of respected former leaders and eminent figures, is meant to mediate conflicts proactively. However, the panel is seldom used and tends to function more as a symbolic entity rather than an active conflict resolution mechanism. One might be inclined to ask, how can a group of individuals who were once leaders of highly corrupt governments in countries that have never known lasting peace effectively mediate peace in situations where the African Union itself has struggled to make headway? Doesn't the existence of this panel of the wise risk making Africa appear more ridiculed on the global stage? 3. The Continental Early Warning System, CEWS. The CEWS was created to predict and prevent conflicts before they escalate, but it has largely failed due to a lack of credibility and action. The system's effectiveness remains questionable, undermining its intended role in early intervention. This situation highlights how no institution can gain credibility when the AU suffers from such a significant lack of trust, primarily due to the unwillingness of member state leaders to grant the continental body any real authority. Behind all the years of rhetoric lies a failure to empower the AU to take decisive action. 4. The Peace Fund. This fund, designed to finance AU-led peacekeeping missions, has historically been dependent on external donors. Consequently, peacekeeping efforts often align with the priorities of donors rather than the continent's own needs, limiting their effectiveness and relevance. This reality about funding underscores the unfortunate truth that Africa cannot achieve meaningful progress without the backing of external powers, who continue to be criticized for exploiting the continent's resources, often using ongoing conflicts as a means to further their own interests. 5. The African Standby Force and Regional Brigades. The AU's plan to deploy rapid response forces has not materialized as expected. These forces, such as the East African Standby Brigade, have faced delays in deployment and have struggled to address crises in countries like Ethiopia and Sudan. As a result, countries often turn to external interventions, highlighting the limitations of the AU's peacekeeping mechanisms. Despite its establishment 2 decades ago, the AU's peace and security architecture lacks the necessary political support, resources, and determination to effectively address the continent's security challenges. All the facts presented here clearly demonstrate that, despite the AU's recognition, Africa will continue to rely on external intervention as long as its leaders fail to grasp the true meaning and urgency of continental unity. The way forward. The root causes of Africa's persistent conflicts are complex, with political, economic, and social dimensions. While the AU and regional bodies have frameworks in place to address these issues, their implementation remains inconsistent. Strengthening these mechanisms, building political will, and addressing underlying socio-economic challenges are crucial to realizing the AU's vision of a peaceful, integrated, and prosperous Africa by 2063. Africa faces the world's largest forced displacement crisis, widespread political instability, territorial disputes, and security challenges exacerbated by climate change. Achieving peace will be a difficult journey, but with focused efforts and genuine commitment, Africa can overcome its challenges and emerge as a global leader in unity and resilience. The most critical factor for African stability is the unity of the continent and its people. Unfortunately, this remains elusive, as unity has not traditionally been a strength of the African continent. It is no surprise, then, that its leaders struggle to unite under the aging AU. For Africa to overcome its challenges, it must cultivate a new generation of leadership committed to building a more powerful and inclusive AU.
Join Diaspoint to explore public views on key events shaping Africa. We highlight governance successes and challenges, promoting awareness and inclusive participation. Your voice matters in Africa's transformation. Follow us and share our content. Diaspoint, the African diaspora engaged in Africa's future.